So let's talk about me. Oh wow, the colors are completely wrong. I'm going back to what the others were complaining about. Okay, who am I? I'm a professor of computer networks at the University of Cyprus. I'm working with mobile wireless sensor networks, Internet of Things, security for the last, I don't know, 10, 15 years. I like all things connected. I also like robots lately. And, but what I am not is an expert on blockchain. So what I'm going to be giving you today is a different view of how the Internet of Things and blockchain work, because consider this as someone looking at blockchain with a very fresh mind, right? And trying to understand if this thing actually fits to what I already know from my years of experience. So let's see. First of all, the Internet of Things is not something new. I mean, it has been there for a long time. We have been connecting things together and in small groups for the longest period of time. And what happens now is that we have found a very nice term, a very catchy term. The marketing teams went behind it. The big names are supporting it, so everybody is all of a sudden interested. Now, what has changed is that everything, all these devices are now smaller. They have better designs, fancy designs. They have faster connectivity because the technology has progressed, of course, and are mobile in the sense that we couldn't really do a lot of long-range mobile and high-speed mobile before. So the opportunity, of course, is there. I mean, otherwise nobody would care. We're talking about trillions of dollars of value in the next 10 years. We're talking about billions of connected devices, and we're talking about quintillions of data every day. So this is what drives everything, right? And I'm really glad that I'm in this last session, and people have talked about blockchain and AI and sensor networks before me, because I don't need to convince you about these things. So I'm just going to be using them. Now, the problem is that we still have issues with security, as we've seen before, and privacy, of course, because privacy is a big thing in the social world. But then we still need to solve a lot of other lower layer, let's say, issues like autonomy. How do you decide of your friend? Decentralization, does it make sense to have ledgers everywhere? And how is data handled? Because if you do have that much amount of data, sometimes you need to process it before you transfer it. So all these things are still open. Now, what I'm going to try to do is see, okay, a lot of people say blockchain will solve the security issues of IoT. So I'm putting a question mark at the end of this. And whether this is correct or not is one thing. The other is, okay, how do they actually coincide? And I'm gonna take the same approach like everybody else. When you give a new term, you have to explain what it is, right? So I'm going to just, these are three different definitions. What I care about is that in the first one we say network of physical devices, uniquely identifiable, system of devices, unique identifiers, transfer data, device, share data. So you see the point, right? It's devices, interconnected, they share data, they produce data. Now, the point is what's going to happen. And the problem, I think, nowadays, is that nobody really has the same vision of the Internet of Things. It's not that the Internet of Things is different, but we look at it from different points of view. I'm an electrical and computer engineer, so I usually look at the system parts of something first. So I and many others consider the Internet of Things as a system of systems. You have the devices, you have the connectivity of the devices, you have the platforms connecting and producing or offering the data, and then you have the business side of things, right? You have the connectivity, the interconnections, the APIs, and the applications and whatever services you offer on top of those applications. And most of the blockchain-related connections to IoT are actually here. I'm kind of giving you an insight of what's going to come later. I'm actually trying to understand if there's some capability of blockchain to be present down here as well. So this is what the IoT ecosystem is. So we have the devices, we have the data, and then we have the AI. In my mind, these three are going to be going hand to hand for a long time. And these are people who are working on IoT alone. And then you also recognize here, so this is the device, the system stuff. This is the service stuff. These are the applications and the platforms. And these are all the value added, the data analytics and everything. And security, like everything else, comes at the very bottom, very last. It's always an afterthought, actually. It was with the internet, it was with many other things. And then we recognize, oh, okay, yeah, we need to do something about security as well. I don't need to talk about blockchain. You've heard all about it. But what I care about, and because I'm illiterate, no, just, what I care about is that, okay, it's distributed, right? It fits with the decentralized view that we have about the Internet of Things. It handles data, which is what Internet of Things is expected to handle. And it does it in a cryptographically verifiable way and all that stuff. So we have records, we have assets, and we have smart contracts. And we will see if these three things can be inserted into the Internet of Things, not only at the upper layers, like I said, but at the lower layers. Now, what we have now is not a fully decentralized type of Internet of Things. Things do not really talk to each other. They usually, nowadays, talk to the cloud. And we get our data from the cloud. So before, we had them connect to a specific server, the client-server paradigm. Now we have the cloud paradigm, and then we will have the completely decentralized. Now, it doesn't mean that everything will move to that. Not everybody needs to do decentralized stuff. A lot of things will remain here because sometimes it's easier to handle. And there are many ways blockchain can solve challenges, but these are just wish lists, as I say. This is not necessarily the way it will happen or happens now. But, okay, let's see how. Let's go into the actual relationships. In my mind, and I think the previous talk kind of gave an introduction to that, the industrial side of Internet of Things is most probably will be the one which will embrace blockchain faster, right? Or it needs that part, because we could potentially use it for secure storage, and we can use the smart contracts. It seems, at least that's my humble opinion, that that's the part of blockchain that makes more sense to the Internet of Things. So it will be the basis for this trust. So if we manage to get all nodes authenticated, if we manage to get all transactions verified, if we manage to get all data securely stored, then things will happen. The asset tracking example that we've seen before is one of the best, or probably the most mature examples that we have, right? That's why everybody uses it. So we produce something, and we track it within the factory, and then we ship it out, and then we tag the the container, and then when the container reaches a destination, then we send some predetermined message in a certain way, and that tells everybody else, okay, the shipment has arrived. Now, if we are smart, we can cheat the system, but if we accept that this is the only way the data will arrive at point C, then, okay, that's it. Now, food safety tracking. Until this morning, I wasn't sure that anybody could actually do this. Vasos showed that they can actually do it. But IBM, just a few months ago, said, we hope that blockchain will be able to do that, right? So, of course, people always say it's still at an early stage. It's a young type of technology. Not all verticals are, not all problems in all verticals are solved yet. But what I'm trying to build is the notion that solutions are not there yet. And what I'm going to take the example of IBM. I'm not affiliated with IBM. I don't endorse any of that. But I wanted to use this to show that the Internet of Things is here, and blockchain is here. There's no blockchain part here unless we use the industrial security example shown just before me. And that's my concern. That's what I care about. Because if your data, I mean, if you consider that, okay, the data is valid and you work with it, that's fine. But I want to make sure that the data gets to you and that the data is not transferred, tampered, and all that stuff before it leaves my environment. And this is a very interesting example, again, based on the IBM concept. Intelligent cars. We've heard about autonomous vehicles. You have car events. They go into the IoT platform, and the IoT platform invokes a contract. But this is something that we are not controlling here. And then we do the analytics as an afterthought, right, for the business side of things. I'm going to start giving you a couple of examples of specific solutions of how things could come together. Instructions. If I want, I don't know, a sensor or the value of a sensor to mean something to an actuator, then, okay, I'm going to hash the information. I'm going to send it to another device that's going to go to the blockchain. The receiver of information hashes the same. They verify that this match, and he says, okay, yeah, this is what I was supposed to receive. But this is not something new. I mean, we've been doing this, right? We've been hashing things and sending things over the internet to verify integrity for a long time now. Same thing with identifying devices using blockchain. If we consider that the ID of a device is an entry in the blockchain ledger, and then we make sure that if it's there, I can trust it, and then I can use some ID, some keys deriving from that part. Okay, but still, I mean, this is what we've been doing with digital signatures. So it's not completely new again. It doesn't mean that blockchain cannot do it, but maybe it doesn't make sense. What I find interesting, an interesting option, is to certify or register the device, a new device. So when you get in a new system, you have some authority that says, okay, let's take this device, it has ID X, it's in this room, this GPS, this temperature, these lighting conditions, and I registered using these characteristics. And if somebody else tries to impersonate this particular device, they're not going to be able to replicate everything. That's a good way of doing it. I haven't seen it done yet, but it's a good application of blockchain's capabilities. Device firmware. the Mirai bots, right? To be able to verify that whatever somebody tells you to upload is a valid version of things. Yeah, okay, now we also have hashing, MD5 and all that stuff. But the point is to be sure that this is what you're supposed to be downloading to your device. And if this is done automatically, then you need to show that this is the right code to download. This is what we've been doing as humans for the longest amount of time, right? Our human immune system knows all the cells, all the types of systems flowing in our blood system, right? And then a foreign object, a virus, gets flagged, and we say, okay, let's do something to get rid of it. The same thing with the firmware updates. I mean, the firmware update, just to validate that, okay, this is the right firmware, is one thing. And then to push software updates automatically over the air, as we say in the Internet of Things world, we could possibly use blockchain. So the manufacturer will deploy a smart contract with the device, and then when something is introduced, get pointed to the right place to retrieve the code, and the code is of course secure, and then you upload and then you do your thing. So, in a nutshell, blockchain doesn't solve every security problem in IoT. It certainly doesn't solve the communication security problems in IoT. It solves other issues related with IoT, mostly about the data part, the business part of things. Now, I just wanted to show that a lot of people make a lot of claims, and a lot of these are false. Like the Adept system by IBM and Samsung. They say, okay, you're going to have a washing machine. It's going to recognize if it goes out of detergent. It's going to alter its detergent and pay with Bitcoin. It's not blockchain in the Internet of Things. It's just Bitcoin. That's it. Or tile pay. You collect data, and then you sell them using cryptocurrency. Okay. Or you produce energy, you record it, and then you sell the data using a specific way. There's nothing about IoT in this picture, right? So these are, I mean, be careful. A lot of people are going to use these buzzwords together because they make sense, but it doesn't mean that they mean what we want them to mean. Now, the problems, the shortcomings, I think, at the end of the day, is that blockchain, the way it's done, it means that you need processing power. You need to cryptographically process things. And not all IoT devices are the same, and not all of them have the ability to do that. So that's an issue. Storage. It was interesting to see the distributed ledgers in the wireless sensor networks, but for me, it was always a no-no. We don't really store things there for a long time, and we don't build on it. I mean, that's a good solution, I don't doubt it, but for me, overall, it's not the best way to do it. Energy consumption. You need power. IoT may not always be plugged. It may maybe work on solar or something, but it usually has a limited power supply. So you don't want to be very strong about that. And of course, there are other issues, legal and compliance issues on using these types of technologies in environments which are not regulated. So, in conclusion, what I think will be the winning trio is if we properly incorporate IoT, blockchain, and AI. That's going to be at the end of the day, that's going to be the winning solution. Transition to a decentralized network doesn't always make sense. It doesn't mean that every car and every factory and every home need to have this type of structure. And blockchain is definitely not able to solve any of the things in my wish list, the lower layer security stuff. But they bring, indeed, a lot of advantages to this new game, along with the set of disadvantages that I talked about before. So if you're going to get out of this, is that you're going to get something out of my talk, is that, okay, it's there, they are converging in certain areas, and they are not there yet in many others. So thank you very much. If you have any questions, of course, or you can contact me.
Questions? No?
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
Next one.